Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be talking about Willard the Wizard. Let me tell you something about Willard the Wizard. I have wanted this book for ages. It's Willard the Wizard, A Life Under Canvas. Look at that image. I love that image. This is, for me, this is where magic is. This is where magic happens. David Charvet with Francis Willard, Madeline Willard, and Eugene Willard, published by Mike Caveney's Magic Words. Just an absolute joy to finally get my hands on. Let me tell you this story. So, I want this book. I want it very badly, but there's other things I want to get, and so I'm buying some other things. I put this on my wish list on Amazon, because I do a lot of shopping on Amazon. Now, typically a Magic Words book I would probably buy straight from Mike Caveney. I bought so many straight from Mike Caveney, and I probably would have done that here, but, I just wanted to kind of bookmark it for future reference, because I really wanted to get around to reading it and getting my hands on it. Well, at Christmas time, my wife has access to my Amazon wish list. And so she went on and, unknown to me, she went ahead and purchased this book for me as a Christmas present. Now, as I record this, I'm in April of 2023. This was given to me December 25th of 2022. I've had it a little while. I've been digesting it. I've been reading it. I've been studying it, and I want to bring it to you because for me, Willard the Wizard represents not just a person, not just a history, not just a biography, but a tradition. A tradition. Willard performed. Now there was more than one Willard, by the way. There was the senior Willard who was James Moroni Willard. We'll talk about that in a moment. There were a couple of other Willards, and then the one that really stuck and really made a name for himself was Harry Francis Willard. We're going to talk mostly about him. This book is mostly about Harry Francis Willard, but the Willard history is one thing. The family history is one thing. And by the way, like all families, the history of the Willards is a blend of victory and tragedy, and you read this book and you get a sense for the adversity that the family had to deal with, what they had to come to grips with in order to maintain and reach the level of success that they did. This is why biographies are so important. Because as you struggle through life, and you think, oh, I'm finally getting my opportunities, and then something happens in your personal life that just derails everything. You can get to think that you're all alone in that sort of experience, but the reality is, it's common to human beings. It's common to the human experience to deal with diversity, to deal with adversity, to deal with adversity. And so when you read biographies, and Carter comes to mind as well, when you read biographies, you read about the adversity that, and when I say diverse, I mean the diverse experiences that you will have as you travel through the human experience. It's easy to get derailed. It's easy to lose your focus. But when you read these biographies of people that have been there, done that. But the reason the Willard story is so important to me is because it was an itinerant show. It traveled primarily in the South. They went into an area. They set up a tent. The tent could seat many hundreds of people. They sold tickets. They did their show. They moved on to the next town. There's something incredibly romantic about that to me. You have your touring company, you have your tent that belongs to you, your stage that belongs to you. Think of what you can do if you have your own theater and your own stage. Well, that's what the touring magicians had back in the day. Now, television, of course, had a severe impact on the traveling itinerant show. When you had a community, picture this, you have a community, there's no internet, there's no YouTube, there's no television, there might or might not be a movie theater. What are you going to do? You know, you're looking forward to that traveling show coming to town so you can run out and buy a ticket and enjoy an evening of entertainment. You know, we as magicians, we had it really well, I think, in those days when people valued live entertainment because it was their primary source of entertainment. And the Willards certainly took well advantage of that. Now there is a YouTube link that I will provide for you below based on this book, Willard the Wizard, A Life Under Canvas. But it's a very brief, I think it's maybe 5 minutes, 6 minutes long. You can get a very brief overview of the biography of the Willards if you take a look at that. Another video link I'm going to put below is Glenn Falkenstein and Frances Willard. Frances Willard was the daughter of Harry Willard, and she is the mother-in-law of Michael Lamar. But the reason I put the link below, and you'll see in a moment when I get into the biography, James Moroni Willard, who was the first Willard, born 1860, developed the Spirit Cabinet Act sometime between 1875 and 1880, which was, of course, the heyday of modern spiritualism. And, of course, Anna Eva Fay was doing a Spirit Cabinet Act very similar to this, but he developed the Spirit Cabinet Act, and that act became a mainstay in the Willard Show all the way through the 20th century. Carrying on that tradition is Frances Willard and Glenn. Now, if you go and you watch that video, you will see an act that has been perfected over many, many decades. And I think you will thoroughly enjoy it. So please go check that out. Now, let me share with you some information about the Willards. It was a world of magic. I'm quoting now from A Life Under Canvas. It was a world of magic under a theater of canvas for nearly 100 years. The Willard the Wizard Show toured the southern United States with one of the largest magic shows the world has ever seen. We're talking about many trucks, a very large tent, very similar to what you might see in a circus, and they had their own stage, their own props. It was a huge show. James Moroni Willard was born in 1860. He was inspired by John Henry Anderson, the great wizard of the North. James became Willard the Wizard somewhere between 1875 and 1880. He was touring with, at that time, a dramatic touring company, and his feature act was the Spirit Cabinet in those days. In 1895, actually December 12th, 1895, Harry Francis Willard was born. He would become Willard the Wizard as he grew. Now, this is another thing I love about these stories, and I'm going to talk about Ken Griffith also in another video. You can take a look at that, but he did the same thing. When these touring magicians had children, their families toured with them. And as the children grew, they became part of the show. And so Harry learned magic from his earliest years. And not only learned magic, but he learned how to perform magic for live audiences, for tough crowds as a child. So imagine what he became as he entered adulthood and as he moved through his adulthood. I mean, this kind of perfection, you just don't have the opportunity like that anymore. But these old showmen, they used to tour with their families. Their wives and children didn't stay home. They toured with them. So I think it's a bygone era. Let's just put it that way. It's a bygone era. In 1903, James Willard decided to move his show into his own tent theater and concentrate on performing in the southern part of the country, particularly Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. And that's pretty much where the Willard show stayed over the next many decades that they performed. And there are certain advantages to performing in those areas. And as you probably know, those areas are prone to rough storms, as we've had this past year. And so on more than one occasion, the Willards had to deal with great loss because of the storms they encountered on their touring route. In 1914, James began grooming Harry to take over the show. In 1921, Harry was performing as Willard the Wizard, and he remained Willard the Wizard up through the 1950s. Actually, the 1960s as well, but I think they stopped touring in around the 1950s. 1940, December 12th, 1940, Frances Willard was born. Frances Willard, who later became the mother-in-law of Michael Amar, began her career at age 6. See what I'm saying? This is unbelievable how they generations did this. So Frances began performing at age 6. She married magician Glenn Falkenstein, and their signature trick was the signature trick of the Willard family, the Spirit Cabinet. If you have an opportunity to see that act, just go ahead and click on that link below. Take a look. 1970, Harry Willard died on June 28th, 1970. God rest his soul. Now, I want to share one other thing with you. This is on page 141 in the book. By the way, the book is lavishly illustrated. It's brilliantly written. It is a fun read. I hope you enjoy biography. I hope I've made that emphasis clear as I've continued to present to you. Biographies are indispensable. I think you would be better served reading a biography than maybe reading a magic book, at least at a certain point, because you learn so much from biographies. But let me share this with you. This is in a single page, actually a half a page. The author, David, shares with you the business model of the Willard family. I think this is so important because I don't think, even though the age of the tent show is gone, for logistic reasons, I mean, find an open field where you can pitch a tent, right? I mean, it just doesn't happen. But the business model, I think, is valid. And if you want to see a modern dissertation on this, I'm looking over here because I have the book somewhere. I don't know exactly where it is, but a few years ago I purchased a book from Cramian on his business model, and the business models are very similar. I think any touring illusion show that doesn't have a single sponsor to begin with probably should look at this business model as a way of advancing your career and your dream. I mean, if you dream of being an illusionist, this is the way Harry did it, okay? Let me share this with you. As he had in times of past tragedy, Harry Willard again immersed himself in the show. Once a new tent was purchased, he was back on the road to fulfill remaining dates of the 1936 season throughout Louisiana that had been booked by James before his death. While James had previously handled all of the business end of Harry's show, now it was up to Harry and Joy alone. For the 1937 season, Harry worked advance for the show, meaning after the show was set up in a new town, he would travel ahead each morning looking for that next town to book. He would return to the lot in the afternoon, present the show that evening. During this time, the show began working more under sponsorship of clubs and organizations in each town. You catch that? So he would go into the next town, he would look for a sponsor, a club, an organization, a charity. These included such groups as the volunteer fire departments, schools, churches, fraternal clubs. The sponsoring group would sell tickets in the weeks prior to the arrival of the show and receive a percentage of the ticket sales, usually 40% after expenses were deducted for their efforts. Now that's not quite the Cramian model. I think Cramian actually hires his own crew to do the ticket sales. But he has usually a charitable sponsor. So you get a call, you've probably gotten a call like this. You get a call, there's a magic show coming to town, proceeds benefit XYZ charity. Maybe it's the Cancer Foundation, maybe it's Hodgkin's disease, or whatever it might be. So you have sold the idea of a fundraising magic show to an organization, and then you use that organization's name to sell tickets to the show. So this was the basic business model of the Willard show, and I think that it's still a valid model today. Now I don't do that. You know, I dreamed when I was young, I dreamed of doing an illusion show. I dreamed of being a touring illusionist, just like the Willards. You know, but today I'm the local magician. That's what I am. I do birthday parties. I do events. I do corporate events. I do schools. I do assemblies. I do churches. I mean, I do these things. I don't have sponsorship. I don't solicit sponsorship. I don't have a big show anymore. I had a big show at one time, but nothing like the Willard show or the Ken Griffin show. We'll talk about that in a minute too. So folks, that's my 10 cents on Willard the Wizard. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you will pick up the book because it's magnificent. I loved it. Thank you so much. Please comment down below. I love your comments. I'm sure some of you have some insight on the Willards that I missed. Please share it. Please subscribe if you've not done so already. Have a great day, everyone. I'll see you next time.